But, you know, there's a lot of songs in my past, and, you know, songs are like your kids, you know, you raise them from, you know, the time they're little till they're big and grown up, and then you wave goodbye as they go out the door. And, you know, I have many favorites.
Now, missing from that list is Hotel California, which a lot of people would say, just from the standpoint of sales and identity of the Eagles, that seems like it belongs on the list.
Yeah, I think you could put that in. That was probably our best record. As far as making a record is concerned, I think Hotel California, the album, and Hotel California, the song, were probably the zenith of the Eagles in that what we had to say came together with our learning of how to make records. And that song was co-written with Don Henley and also with Don Felder, an often not recognized but integral part of the Eagles in the second half of the band.
It's also a very sophisticated lyric. Now, a lot of songs have verse, chorus, maybe a second verse. Now let's repeat the whole thing, get the chorus and the hook in there, and we're done. I mean, this thing is a real narrative.
Well, Don and I talked about that song, and you know, we were and are big Steely Dan fans. We were always quite amazed that Steely Dan was so brave lyrically. They got the Steely Dan T-shirts. You know, they had lines in their songs that we would sort of looked at ourselves and says, whoa, would we have put that in one of our songs? We started talking about Hotel California and wanted to sort of write a song that was sort of like an episode of The Twilight Zone. All of our songs were cinematic, but we wanted to open up with a it was just one shot to the next, and they didn't necessarily make sense. It was just picture of the guy on the highway, picture of the hotel, picture, you know, and the guy walks in, the door opens, strange people, and it's just sort of following this guy, and it doesn't really make sense. It's just sort of a, like I said, an episode out of The Twilight Zone or something. And so we decided to just sort of create something strange, just to see if we could do it. And then, of course, a lot was made out of it, a lot was read into it, a lot more than probably there exists, but, you know, I think we achieved perfect ambiguity.
What was the line, they stab it with their stealing eyes, they just can't kill the beast? Was that a tip of the cap to Steely Dan?
As they had said in a song of theirs called Tell Me Everything You Did, they had a line where the guy was arguing with his girlfriend, and the line was, turn up the Eagles, the neighbors are listening. And Walter Becker had a girlfriend at the time who was a big fan of the Eagles, and I think it used to grate on Walter that she used to play Eagles records at the house maybe, but that's how, so they sent a little message to us, and yeah, we give them a little tip of the tam.
If you achieved perfect ambiguity, what's the strangest interpretation of a line in that song that you've heard from anybody?
Well, I don't think it's not so much one line, but just that they just took that overall album and opened it up and took that picture of us with, you know, and I was watching on, you know, some religious channel, you know, the guy holding up the album saying, and this woman is a priest in the devil's church, and this over here, right here is, you know, that. And I'm like, whoa, really? I didn't know that when we hired them.
With Hotel California, was it almost inevitable that at that point a certain kind of peak was reached? Maybe it wasn't your best album, but commercially it was the most successful album, and at that point it almost had to start tapering off because you'd positioned yourselves sort of as musicians / outlaws. Well, how much of an outlaw can you be if you're this universally successful, and not only is the kid who wants to drop out of school listening, but his teacher's listening?
There are only a few people in rock and roll who understand the experience of going in to make an album after you've sold over 10 million copies of the album you previously made. I guess starting out, you know, one dream would be to have a multi-platinum album. We never, of course, anticipated that we would go over 10 or 15 million. But it turns around and puts a tremendous amount of pressure on you to, you know, to live up to everything that was said and about that record and you know, the amount of sales. Somebody asked my friend Bob Seger why the Eagles break up, and he said, well, in 2 words, Hotel California. You know, and I think in some ways we did peak, you know, that was, you know, the best work that we did. That was where everything really came together, personnel, songwriting, the experience in the studio to learn how to make records and put them together. It was really an exciting time. It was an easy record to make. The whole album was done in 6 or 7 months. It was not a difficult record to make. We were on a roll. It's good to have hit records because even though you may feel that you haven't done your best work, you know you're on the right track. You know, and I think we were bristling with confidence. at that time, and we weren't afraid to step out and take some chances, and we had a very, very prolific couple of guitar players in our band, too, guys that were really good.
You think it was your best creatively, critically, as well as commercially?
I think, yeah, I think there's no doubt.